Hi everyone, it's Knuckle. Today let's read and annotate a bit of the introduction to Emerson's essay Nature and a bit of the first chapter. This essay really changed my relationship with nature and with my understanding of my own existence. It's an original and unique perspective that I hope you'll take time to listen to. You won't regret it. This essay probably feels even more relevant now than when it was written centuries ago.
So Ralph Waldo Emerson was a mid-19th century writer. He was from the Romantics and Transcendentalists period of American writing. You may have read his writing or the writings of Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, his contemporary, in your high school English class. So let's read just a little bit of the introduction and a little bit of chapter 1 today. So the introduction begins, our age is retrospective. So that means looking backwards. It builds the sepulchres of the fathers, so monumentalizing the past and those who came before us, kind of like what we're doing right now with Emerson. It writes biographies, histories, and criticism. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face, we through their eyes. So these fathers that we monumentalize, all of these generations that we're venerating retrospectively, they had their own original experiences of God and nature. And instead of finding these things for ourselves the way that they did, or finding our own relationship with God and nature the way that that the foregoing generations had, we instead are experiencing these things through their writings and through their findings. So again, ironically, this is like what we're doing right now, right? We're actually learning about nature right now through Emerson's eyes at the moment. So then he's saying, why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why, instead of just studying these texts, why don't we actually have our own direct and original relationship? Why should we not have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? So if we're to truly venerate the past thinkers, then we should do what they did, which is not to merely take their word for things, but to experience things originally for ourselves, right? Insight here, he says, why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition? Insight is something very personal, it's individual, it's almost definitionally original. It's intuitive, it's natural, natural having the same root word as nature actually, rather than being something instructional. The way that tradition is kind of instructional, you could think, right? Even if only implicitly, tradition is something we kind of learn rather than insight. And a religion by revelation to us, not the history of theirs. So I love this. We would prefer to revel in the history of former people's revelations rather than to allow ourselves the freedom to have those revelations on our own, the way that they did. And when he says here a religion, he's not asking us to create a new religion, but rather to develop our own new, unique, personal relationship with divinity that transcends the intellectual and is more rooted in being. Embosomed for a season in nature. I love that we're using the word season here. So not embosomed for some time, not embosomed for a short time, but embosomed for a season. So when you put that kind of finite period there, you're not saying just time in general, but embosomed for a season. When you put that kind of finite period, you're accentuating the finiteness of it, right? Like in Macbeth's Tomorrow speech when he says, life's but a poor player who struts and frets his hour upon the stage. His hour upon the stage, right? So not his time upon the stage, his hour upon the stage. So that accentuates the finiteness. And it really works there because the person acting as Macbeth really is a player, an actor who is strutting and fretting his hour, literally hour or two upon the stage, and then is heard no more. But here I also like season for another reason, which is that season is kind of nature's way of keeping time, right? Instead of saying embezzlement for a lifetime in nature, embezzlement for a season. Season is a nature's way of keeping time. So we're not thinking of time in a man-made sense, but in a more geological sense. And that sort of geological sense is sort of dwarfing man's place in the world a bit. The time that we're talking about here kind of reminds me of the opening to Zora Neale Hurston's novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, where she talks about how our dreams get mocked to death by time, right? Time there with a capital T time, which is a kind of omniscient force that man has no control over. And we're getting that sense here with embezzlement for a season in nature, with that natural sense of time that's a bit greater than man. So embezzlement for a season in nature whose floods of life stream around and through us and invite us by the powers they supply to action proportioned to nature. Why should we grope among the dry bones of the past or put the living generation into masquerade out of its faded wardrobe? So nature is actually actively inviting us to remember ourselves as natural beings, to engage with the world in a present and living way rather than through the dry bones of the past. In centralizing past perspectives over present experience, we're putting ourselves, our living generation, into masquerade. So Emerson is asking us to try to do the opposite. The sun shines today also. It's easy to forget that. I'm actually going to put that in yellow. Because of the sun. The sun shines today also. There is more wool and flax in the fields. There are new lands, new men, new thoughts. Let us demand our own works and laws and worship. So our own intuitive insight from our own experience come up with our understanding of work and laws and worship. Now let's take a look a bit. So there's a couple more, there's one or two more paragraphs here in the introduction. I'm going to skip over those because I think this really covers the essence of the introduction. So let's take a look at two small excerpts from chapter 1. So to speak truly, few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. At least they have a very superficial seeing. The sun illuminates only the eye of the man, but shines into the eye and heart of the child. The lover of nature is he whose inward and outward senses are still truly adjusted to each other, who has retained the spirit of infancy even into the era of manhood. So both the English and European romantics like Wordsworth and Blake, as well as the American transcendentalists, had a lot of interest in children and their more natural and connected relationship with the world. So this relationship between the inward and the outward senses is really a central theme of this whole text. How do you define that barrier? Does that barrier exist? In the end of the introduction, Emerson sets some definitions where he defines nature as everything that surrounds us and uses the word soul to describe our inner worlds. But it's interesting to even think about that. What is that? Is there a clear barrier between our inner world and our outer world? So we'll just skip over here to this, to another fruity passage here. In the woods too, a man casts off his years as a snake his slough, and at what period soever of life is always a child. So that's really interesting. Not only do children have a more natural relationship with nature, but actually when a man steps into nature, his years are shed like a snake's shedding its slough. So man too becomes as a child when he's in nature. So I like that idea of him casting off his years rather than just becoming younger, right? The idea of him actually casting off those years, it's inviting an idea of timelessness. He's not just becoming younger. The concept of time itself loses its meaning here. And the idea of him being always a child, again, that always is bringing in that dimension of timelessness. And it's a realization that this is something that's always there. That's actually always there even when he's not in nature, even if he doesn't realize it. So this dimension of timelessness is always there, whether we realize it or not. So in the woods, in perpetual youth, again, perpetual youth, right? I really like that too. That's, again, bringing the timelessness, the eternity. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign, a perennial feast is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. Again, we're bringing in that notion of timelessness, right? Where he can't see how he would tire of them in 1,000 years. So it's almost as if time loses its meaning. It's as if thousands of years lose their meaning. In that one instant, he could be there forever and not tire of it. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, leaving me my eyes, which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. So this concept of the transparent eyeball is probably the most discussed when people are talking about this essay of Emerson's. I am nothing, I see all. That's what he describes the experience of being a transparent eyeball as. So you're totally captivated by and totally engulfed by the currents of universal being circulating through and around you. You're totally engulfed by the experience of nature. You're totally captivated by it that you forget about you. There's almost not that separation between you and what surrounds you. That almost disappears. You are nature experiencing itself, right? You are the currents of the universal being circulating through you. You are nature experiencing itself. I am part or particle of God. God in most religions is represented as a sort of all-engulfing spirit that permeates everything and is everything, but that also is an observer and is observing and experiencing itself and its own creation. So here you have that merging of God and man, that place where the spirit and the universal being that's circulating through the creation are kind of merging with each other. So I hope you enjoyed this close reading of Emerson's Nature. But remember, don't take Emerson's word for it. Go out into the world and enjoy your own original experience of nature and divinity. And maybe you have a different way of describing it, this experience. Maybe you wouldn't describe it as the experience of the transparent eyeball. Maybe you have a different way, and a unique and original way of describing your experience based on your insights that nature brings you. Maybe it's time for you to write your own essay on nature and share it with the world. Feel free to comment with your own experiences of nature too.